Good evening, everybody. And first of all, Happy New Year. We here at the Garden State Java Group, hope you had a wonderful holiday season last month. And welcome to the January 2022 edition of the Garden State Java User Group. We're delighted to have Billy Korando, the Java developer advocate at Oracle. He's going to provide a more comprehensive introduction, but I will say on a personal level, we got to meet. Good evening, everybody. First of all, Happy New Year. We here at the Garden State Java Group, hope you had a wonderful holiday season last month, and welcome to the January. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so on a personal level, we got to meet at Oracle Code 1 in 2019. And as some of you, if you follow Billy on Twitter, he's a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. I am a huge New Orleans Saints fans, and there was a game where the Saints and Chiefs played, and we had some good-natured trash talking during that game. So that was a lot of fun. So, without further ado, Billy, take it away, and we look forward to hearing more about. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Before that, got to do this. See that? I'm all messed up here. Start from the beginning. Okay. All right. So first, what we want to do is our agenda for tonight, and thank you, our sponsors. What's new out there? I already introduced Billy, so we'll skip that. And at the end, we have a couple of odds and ends to talk about upcoming meetings and upcoming conferences. Our platinum sponsor for 2022 is JFrog, and we appreciate their support. Please visit their website. And you'll hear from Ari Waller, who's head of developer relations over at JFrog. He will visit some of our meetings from time to time. Our silver sponsor is Azul. And our partner is DevNexus, which of course is, many of you may know, is in April 12th to 14th this year in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have our per meeting sponsors, JetBrains, who provides licenses to IntelliJ IDEA, and Jakarta EE and the Eclipse Foundation, who provide hosting with Crowdcast. All right, so what's new? I mentioned this last month, but I want to mention it again. MicroProfile 5 has been released the early part of last month, and the Jakarta EE 10 release has been delayed to the second quarter of this year. This is the Java Trends report for December 2021 was just released less than a week ago. It's a little bit late than what I would have liked, but if you have a chance to read that, we have outside of the Java Q editors, we also have external folks who have contributed to the Trends report itself. And then we're still going to have some more Jakarta community acceptance testing. This is did not edit that right away, but if you have a chance to take
Michael.
Yes.
Sorry, real quick. Are you supposed to be showing some slides? I did turn on my screen share. I don't know if I accidentally knocked off your slides in doing that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I can turn it off for now.
That's fine. No, just leave it on already because the next step was to introduce you.
Okay, sorry about that. Someone else.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, so Billy, please take it away.
All right. Sorry about that. And yeah, thank you for that introduction. So just to kind of quickly go through again. My name is Billy Korando. I am a Java developer advocate with the Java developer or the Java platform team at Oracle. And also, as Michael said, you can find me on Twitter at Billy Korando, where I spend way too much of my time, but please don't tell my boss that. So actually, one thing before I get to anything else. So I am running the Kansas City Developers Conference, and our CFP is open right now. And I'm actually going to post this into the chat. But if you are interested in presenting at KCDC, which is going to be in person in Kansas City, and from August 8th to August 10th, definitely submit it at that link. We are definitely looking for some more Java submissions, so check that out. Back to my presentation, though. A few important notes, as you can see here, definitely ask questions. So I will be monitoring the chat log throughout the presentation. There is a bit of delay, about 20 seconds, I think. So there will be a bit of delay, but ask questions there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And again, you can reach out to me at Billy Korando. I have my DMs open. So if you have a question you just want to ask me specifically, you don't want to necessarily share it with the world, definitely shoot me a DM, and I try to monitor those pretty closely. So I will try to get back to you. But of course, you can just also at me publicly, like, hey, why have you answered my question or something like that? I'll be happy to respond to that. Of course, also you can email me at billy.korando@oracle.com. A link to the slide deck I'll be showing today can be found here on my GitHub, so you can check that out. So you don't have to worry necessarily about writing down as you watch this presentation. Actually, let's go ahead. Oh. Can I? Well, I'll be sure to get a link into the chat log here as well at some point. So one little bit piece of more bureaucracy is, if you do leave this presentation with an intense desire to know more, well, the team I'm on at Oracle, we have a lot of options for you to continue learning. So first is we launched a website, dev.java, that happened the same time when we also released JDK 17 back in September. And we have a lot of great tutorials and other information for developers, whether you're just a new developer or much later in your career. It can be helpful for any kind of developer. And also we have great information on how to find like local jugs. So of course, obviously you already know about Garden State jug, but there could be other jugs as well you want to kind of get in touch with. So you can go there. We have a map about that, or covering those, also upcoming conferences and all that. So it's a great place to go. We also have Inside Java. And so that's kind of focusing on a lot of the development within OpenJDK, just to kind of see what is going to be coming next. Actually, a lot of this presentation is kind of like some of the stuff you would kind of be seeing on Inside.java. We also have the Inside Java newscast, our podcast, which is interviews with the developers on OpenJDK. As Michael mentioned, I also do my sip of Java. So every Monday, I release a 1-minute video on various Java topics that I feel like Java developers would know. Usually I just try to find something that I think is kind of interesting, and then I share that in about a minute. This week I did one on JCommand, which is a great way of being able to debug and analyze a live running Java application. So yeah, you can find that out on my Twitter feed every Monday. And then last is we also have our YouTube channel where we publish particularly the Inside Java newscast, where we again kind of cover what's going on in the OpenJDK project. And then also Jose, he publishes this great JEP Cafe presentations where he covers a JEP in depth, which if you're not familiar with the word JEP, we'll get into that a little bit later, but he covers them in depth. And I always learn something new from his videos every time. So you should definitely check those out as well. All right. All that bureaucracy out of the way, you are wanting to learn about what's coming next for Java. So what's going to be the agenda? We're going to be looking at three different key areas. The first is there's going to be the key language changes that have occurred in Java between Java 11 and Java 17. And thank you, Nihal. That means so much. And then we're going to look at some of the themes of these language changes. And then we're going to get into the future of Java, kind of what's going to be coming down for both in the near future and then a little bit farther down in the future as well. So let's review some of these key language changes that have been added to Java between Java 11 and Java 17. We're going to focus on 4 key changes. There's the updates to the switch, pattern matching for instance of, records, and sealed classes. Now, these aren't all the changes that have been made, and these changes are all part of Project Amber. So there's these various, I guess, sub-projects that you can say that are under the OpenJDK umbrella, and they all kind of focus on different areas. Like other ones include Valhalla, Loom, Panama, which many people have heard about. And of course, Project Amber, as you can see here, the goal of Project Amber is to explore and add new and productivity-oriented Java language features, to Java. So there's been a couple other changes that have been added under Project Amber. Probably one of the really popular ones was local variable type inference, which is or VAR, which was added back in JDK 10 or Java 10. And then there was also text blocks, which I believe was introduced in Java 15 as well. But we're not going to really get into those too much in this presentation. But, these are some of the other changes. And we're not going to really cover any of the other mini changes that have been added to the more broader JDK project during this time as well. But with that said, let's start going into some of these feature updates. The first I'm going to focus on is the updates to Switch, which are introduced in Java 14, and they are part of JEP 361. So what do I mean when I say JEP? Kind of like I was talking about earlier with the JEP Cafe. So let's see if I can get a new window here. So JEP stands for JDK Enhancement Proposal. And what that is a proposal to add a new feature or actually make a somewhat substantial change to the JDK. And it varies. It's usually, I think it's supposed to be about like 2 weeks or more of dedicated developer time to a new feature. Of course, that's the low end. And from there, so much more substantial changes can be made that will take way longer than 2 weeks, but that's kind of where it kind of starts at. But then we can see, I think it's 361. We can see here, you can go to these proposals and it's just, if you can see, so I changed my mouse up to, so my mouse would so often like jump between slides, and now I turned that feature off, but then I had to turn other stuff to like zoom in on it. That doesn't work. But anyways, if you go to JEP, you can put in the name or the number of the JEP here at the end of the URL, OpenJDK Java Net JEPs 361. And from there, you can get a really good summary of what that language feature is. So I just want to say this just so that way you can go in and kind of check it out yourself, because I'm not going to be able to go and cover totally as in deep a depth as what's in these JEPs on the features I'll be talking about. But it's really great information. It gives you like the history, the motivation, and then actually how to use the new feature that's actually being introduced in the JEP. But I'm including all the numbers for these, so that way you have an opportunity to go and learn more about the feature outside of this presentation as well. That said, let's kind of get back into this for Switch updates. First added in Java 14, again, JEP 361, and what was introduced. So, of course, every Java developer, we're all familiar with the switch statement. And here, it's pretty verbose. You have your colon, and then you have whatever you want to have the code executed. And then you have to add the break statement because, well, we have fall through by default. So it creates a lot of noise when you're looking at this code. And it also creates a really easy opportunity for introducing a bug, because maybe while refactoring the code, you accidentally deleted a break statement, or you commented out or something to where you no longer have a break statement in case. And then now when the case 6 is matched, then you get, both the code that's executed for that case, but then it falls through to the next case and that prints out. And all of a sudden you have a bug and you have to go fix that. Very annoying. And then it's just messy to read and look at. So there could be some improvements to this. So the first part of these improvements is actually adding this new arrow syntax. And the arrow syntax means that only the code to the right of that arrow syntax is executed when this case is matched. So now we don't have to have the break statement in there, which is both makes it much more concise to look at, much cleaner to look at, and then also removes opportunities for bugs. And that's also one of the themes I'll also touch on a little bit later is, we hear about verboseness, like Java is very verbose, and, in many ways that is true, but reducing verbosity isn't necessarily just about saving the precious times you have having to type out whatever, like a break statement, because the amount of time that actually saves is so minuscule, it doesn't really matter. And really, it's not so much the typing that's the issue, or what takes a lot of time. It is the fact that you have to, take time to figure out how you want to actually fix an issue, or, run into bugs because of something you did wrong. So verbosity is more about making things easier to read and understand, and then preventing mistakes from occurring. So the first part of it is, again, the arrow statement of only executing the stuff to the right of it and then removing the fall through by default behavior. The other part of it is also making a switch instead of just being only a statement, but also you can also have it be an expression. So here in this case, the switch will return the value that's to the right of the arrow operator when that case matches. And then also when it's in this form, when it's an expression form, it has to be exhaustive. So in this case, we also have to put a default statement at the end of it. And of course, it doesn't have to return like whatever value. You can also throw as well if it makes sense. Like in this case, where you want to throw an illegal argument exception because it didn't match on any of the case statements, which should be the only things that should be possible. Now, of course, if you do need like a whole kind of block of code executed, you can do that as well. You just need to put some brace statements around it, and then you can execute any code to the right of it. In this case, we're doing as an expression form. And in that case, you would have to end that case with the yield. I keep forgetting, but it's a context sensitive code word. It's not an actual keyword. You can still have like yield in other parts of your code, but within the context of a case statement or within a case here, it's a reserved word or something like that. I always forget to look up like the specific term that it's called. It's not keyword, but it's pretty much yield is only reserved and can be context sensitive within the actual switch expression. But you can do this as well if you need to actually execute multiple lines of code that doesn't make sense or want to look clean enough to just have it all to the right of it after an arrow operator. Now, of course, this can also be done with the old colon syntax for a switch. You can also have that return or use yield as well to return value as well. If for some reason you just really like the colon syntax or whatever reason, it is allowed to be flexible to handle in both the different new syntax forms. As I mentioned, when it's an expression form, when you're returning value, it has to be exhaustive. And as of right now, 99% of the time, that means you're going to have a default case. However, in this example, where we have an enum, where we then list out all the different days of the week in this example, since I cover all of them within the case, there's no other possible path. I don't have to provide a default case for it. And we'll see a little bit later on as some of these features kind of build upon each other, how that is actually a really nice feature that's going to be kind of introduced a little bit later on. But that's a preview for what we're going to be talking about a little bit later. We have some other things to cover. And of course, also, sorry, I should say, is that this is also valid with the old colon syntax. And because a yield will then end the execution within that case statement or within the switch case, you don't need to put a break after it. So the next language feature I'm going to talk about is pattern matching for instance of. And this was added in Java 16, and its JEP is 394. So we, again, as Java developers, we've all kind of had to deal with instance of, and 99% of the time, this is kind of what it looks like. You have some sort of value, some sort of type that you just don't know what the actual, like you don't know the concrete type because it's coming from like some sort of external system or it's coming from some sort of input or whatever reason it might be. You just don't definitely know whatever type it is. So then you have to do if, actually it's a string, is an instance of string. Okay, within the if block, then you have to actually assign it to that and do a cast and then do whatever work you want with it. And again, just kind of like we were talking about a little bit earlier with the switch statements, like it's just opportunities for bugs to occur where maybe you forget to include like the correct casting for it or maybe comment it out and then you run into an issue. And sorry, I actually forgot to close the the chat box. So someone Jazz Ritz asks, would the throw stop your code, or would it assign and accepts? It would stop your code. So like it would behave like a normal throw statement would within your code. Yeah, so yeah, what Dimitri said, like it would stop. Yeah, so it would work just exactly like it would a normal throw, or exception throwing would happen. So back to pattern matcher. So again, verbose can just easily run into introduce issues. And of course, here it looks simple enough, but like, what if it could be one of many different kinds of types? And once you kind of start to stack a bunch of these together, it starts to become very noisy to have to assign these values and casting like the way it is here. So now what we have is pattern matching. So where, okay, we have this, again, this variable or this object, actually a string. And then we have the instance of here. But if this is true, then it's going to be assigned to this pattern variable. Now I'm a string. And so pattern matching is going to become a very important concept within the world of Java, where it's something that I wasn't familiar with until I started researching about this, but where pattern matching is where you have a predicate saying like you're going to have some sort of test. And then if that test is true, you're going to assign that value, that you're going to assign the result of that test to then a pattern variable. And this is also then introducing a new concept called flow scoping. So what is flow scoping? So what this is saying that this variable, now I'm a string, is in scope wherever this value has definitely been assigned, or wherever this predicate is definitely known by the compiler to be true. So here, now I'm a string is in scope, and then it's in scope in the following block to these if statements. However, once we get out of the block, then it's actually out of scope. Here again, like within just this evaluation, now my string is only in scope within here, within these braces, but then it's immediately out of scope once it leaves the evaluation statement. So it's a new concept, but it works pretty fluently. Again, if you have to chain a bunch of these together where, actually a string could be a string or it could be a character, hey, I guess that is a sole string, but it could be, one of many different object types, you can easily reuse this pattern variable name, and it'll only be in scope within the following code block. If you need to use this value outside of the if statement, then you'll just have to, have like a variable assigned to the proper scope and then assign it to that variable. The next one I want to talk about is records. This was added in Java 16, and its JEP is 395. And I think records, it's probably one of the most important and impactful changes that have been added to Java since streams or Lambda expressions all the way back in Java 8. And again, it's going to be kind of built upon and further changes that are going to be seen a little bit later on. That's just going to further increase the value of records to developers. So again, probably one of the first ways records will be seen as being useful to developers is greatly reducing verbosity. So like, let's just say like I have some sort of method, and I know this code is small. This is actually intentionally done to be a little bit small looking, but like, let's say we have some sort of method and like, I just need like kind of like a temporary class just to kind of hold some values for a little bit later use. And I'm probably not going to use this class anywhere else. Well, if I wanted to actually do this within like the body of the method, like it's just completely unreadable. I had to define all the fields, define a constructor, maybe define hash code and equals, and then maybe to string if I'm going to print it out, accessors and all that. Like you completely lose all meaning in defining this because it just takes dozens of lines to define these very boilerplate methods. Of course, many IDEs can, generate this stuff for you automatically, but you lose all context just because you're just distracted by all this and the flow of the code is all broken up. And of course, also one of the issues is like if you end up like saying removing a field or changing it or something, then you would also have to make sure you like redo these hash code and equals, which, if it's not a compiler change or something, you can end up having this to where it's broken. So with records, all that dozens of lines of code can actually then be reduced to a single line where I define my class and then all the components of it within just a single line of code. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. Is that also with the pattern matching is like, yeah, you can do like you can also do additional checks on it to the right of it, of that value. I didn't show it just because I don't want to get too deep into it, but yeah, that is also another thing you can do. Great point. But yeah, for records here, you can reduce that dozens of lines of code into just a single line and then use it later on as well, which is just the flow of the code isn't broken up by it. But that's not all about records. It's not just about verbosity. It's also about being a transparent modeling of data as data. So again, we can just, oh, actually I have it right there, where you can just look at the definition of the record and you would know all the meaningful parts about it, that the name of the class and then all the fields within that class, because the superclass of a record is always going to be record. You can't extend it, and records can't be extended, and they can't be injected, and they can't be implicitly final. So that's what allows them to be transparent models of data. Also, all the fields are final, but they're only salary immutable. So like, let's just say if one of these fields was like a list, I couldn't switch out that list for a different list, but I could change potentially if it's like an array list, I could add or remove items from that array list, and that's not going to be prevented. It's only the field is final. So it's shallowly immutable, not like truly immutable all the way down. Also, you can't declare any instance fields. You can't have it field initializers or an instance initializers. Again, this is getting back to the transparent modeling of data as data. You want to be able just to read the definition of a record to know what that record is going to be all about. You don't want to be able to have like some other field like middle name that's defined within like the actual body of the record to where you have to then read it to understand that like, oh, actually there's this other field in there. Or you can't have it to where like you default to have like first name equal is to be like an empty string within the body, because that gets away from it being a proper transparent modeling of data as data. But then also with this is the accessors. So adding like a field or a method to access the first name, like all the fields, that's automatically generated. Hash code to string and equals are also automatically generated, but all those methods can be overridden. Fundamentally, records are just classes. They have certain constraints on them, but you can implement hash code to string equals however you want to. Of course, you don't want to break particularly hash code and equals from what is expected, because then obviously your record classes aren't going to work correctly. Like I said, yeah, fundamentally just a class. So the last of the changes that have been introduced between Java 11 and Java 16 I want to cover is sealed classes. And this one was actually added in Java 17 just back in September, and its JEP is 409. So sealed classes are providing a way for a class to define who can actually extend it. And so here I create like a really simple hierarchy to kind of maybe demonstrate some of this benefit or what it maybe could use in like a semi-realistic example. So we have a sealed class user, which is saying that the classes guest, customer, and admin can extend upon it. Admin is also a sealed class, and it says only super admin and normal admin can extend off it. Guest, in this case, being defined by this solid line, is a final class, so then nothing can extend guest. Customer, it's a non-sealed class, so anything can extend customer, and that would be also the same for normal admin. What this would actually look like here in code is you would have public, and then in this case, it's just an abstract class, and then you would use the keyword sealed to say this is a sealed class, and then you would say permits admin, customer, or guest to extend across off of sealed. And then when you have the subclasses to user that are permitted to extend it, they would then have to define if they are a sealed class themselves, a final class, or a non-sealed class. And basically a non-sealed class is a normal class. That just means, again, anything can extend off of a customer, or I don't show it here, but also like normal admin was like another non-sealed class, which again basically means that it's a normal class where anything can extend off of it. But this is a good way of encapsulating domain information, because we've all within our organizations have certain domain concepts, transaction types, customer types, item types, whatever it is, what it is within the context of your organization, where it's like really they could only be a certain number of things. And this is a way of defining like a super type and then saying like, okay, these are the only real possible possible examples of something that can actually, or concepts that can actually extend across this super type. So this is a way of embedding some of that domain design information within your actual code itself, and not, trying to have to arbitrarily do that or having to use like final classes everywhere, which is helpful. And again, we'll see a little bit later on how this can actually be built upon with some of the other features that are going to be coming a little bit later. Sealed classes can also be used as records. Now, if you remember back, I said records can't be extended, but what you can do is have records implement interfaces. So in this case, I have like a sealed interface user, and then I have the records like guest, admin, and customer. Now, also one other thing to understand is when you create a sealed class, like I have in this example, permits, this is optional. If you actually within the same source file as where you're defining a sealed class also define the subtypes, then that is assumed to be the types that can be valid to extend upon that sealed type. So you don't have to include permits in that case. So permits is optional. Probably about 90% of the time, you're going to probably be using it, but it's not actually absolutely necessary. All right, so what are some of these themes of these changes? Well, one is to be more expressive. You want to be able more easily just to look at your code and just get the meaning derived from the code without having to wade through a bunch of like, boilerplate code like break statements or equals, hash code, and all that stuff. You want to be able to look at the code and just derive the actual business functionality from that code. You also want to make it safer. So you want to have like more compiler warnings. You also want to address some security issues like serialization, the source of so much pain within the Java ecosystem, something that records does pretty well. You also maybe want to have some fewer concerns when it comes to nulls, kind of like we have with instance checking. For example, something I don't really show here, but like you don't have to worry much about null when you do some pattern matching, because a null value type by definition is an instance then of whatever that object is, which again, kind of a good elegant way of avoiding some null issues. And like I said, reducing verbosity and ceremony, but also, as I said, it's not just about typing. It's about reducing those opportunities for bugs to get into your code, because if you're having to put some of these, just rote mechanical things in there to make sure your code works properly. But by kind of reducing just even the need for those, that's just one less area for bugs to occur. So that said, let's and there's a really great quote from Brian Getz, who's the Java language architect, if the name is familiar. But again, kind of like just the more broader encapsulating theme, it's making it easier to program in plain data. It's just becoming even more important in Java as many of our applications become smaller because of microservices or even serverless functions, where you're very often working at that data layer where you're kind of becoming an interface. You need to translate some code, put into like whatever kind of concepts you needed to do, and then send it back out. You're really working at that data layer to where you really kind of do like translation. So it's important to be able to more easily work at that level. But even within the monolith kind of concept, certainly I remember when I was starting off in my career, I was working on more monolithic applications, but even then I was still working with external services where I would have to do a lot of data translation. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the library, but I remember I had to work with this library called Castor, which was all about like translating out this like XML to like something else. And like I had to find like dozens of different classes and all that stuff. And I was just kind of really thinking about while I was getting ready for this presentation, like how how beneficial records and switch expressions and some of these seal classes all would have been to actually defining this all out. That would have saved these fingers from a lot of typing and a lot of getters and setters and all that kind of stuff. With all that said, let's start looking then to see how some of these changes are going to be kind of built upon in some of the future releases of Java. Ooh, I don't know how that got in there. Ooh, oh boy, sorry. Okay. But yes, one thing to keep in mind, to take some inspiration from Doc Emmett Brown, is the future isn't written, it can be changed. So as I'm talking about some of these future changes coming, nothing's written in stone. Some of the more near-term changes, they're much more likely to look exactly what I'm talking about. But as we're particularly talking about stuff farther out, there's a much greater chance of things being changed, or I don't know exactly when they're going to be released and anything like that. So definitely don't just say like, oh, well, 2 years from now, look at this presentation and be like, hey, why did things change? Well, it's because that's just the nature of software development. Things can change based upon feedback, change priorities, and then also maybe what is or isn't technically possible. So let's look first to the near future, what's going to be kind of coming in these, upcoming year or 2 years, or these, next few releases. The first is pattern matching for Switch, and it's currently in what's called Preview 2. So part of Project Amber and part of the concepts that would be so in the future, would there be a way to create a new variable based on an existing record, updating some just part of the state? No, because that would kind of violate the whole concept of a record, which is its invariability. Once a record is set, it's set. Now, if you need to have a new record and just change, like update, like my example with like a name, like you're changing like a person's like Twitter handle, as like I so often like to do, then you would have to create like a whole new instance of that. Yeah. Oh, be able to create a new person with the same state. Also a little bit to that, and I'll actually cover that here pretty soon on that, about how you can maybe easily pull some part of that state out and into a new one. We will be touching on that here very soon, though. That's a great question. But for pattern matching for Switch, it's currently what's called in Preview 2 status. So one of the great changes when Java went to its 6-month release cycle, I think that was also a change concurrently introduced with it, if not soon thereafter, what was called the concept of a preview feature, wherein as a new language feature is going to be added to Java, it will go through 2 rounds at least of preview status where it's included within the actual release, but the change is gated behind both the compiler and runtime flag of a preview status. This way, it allows developers to get out there, provide feedback, but then not also accidentally put it into production. It can still go to production, but you just won't be able to actually get it in there and then maybe run into some sort of issue when the next version of Java comes out and maybe something about a change. But this is a really nice change because like one of the mistakes of Java that we kind of talked about earlier was switch statements with the fall through by default, something that almost no developer really wants. That had we actually had this preview kind of feature back then, maybe that mistake would have been like, hey, no one's actually using faulty by default, and then we can get rid of this, need to have a break statement within this code. And that would have made switch statements a lot easier for all these years for all these developers. So that's one of the nice things you see every time as we go through these preview status. Little changes get made, and it's always usually like something a little bit beneficial. So it's like, hey, you know what? This is a little weird area within our code or within this change that could be improved upon. So that's maybe one of the hidden things that's really nice about this new preview status, is it really allows a chance for these new changes to kind of get worked out before actually becoming full production features, when such changes can't really be made then. So pattern matching, for instance, is also inducing pattern matching to, or not for instance but for switch, where, okay, it's the same concept where we have this predicate, the case matching on integer, and if this is proven to be true, then it's assigned to the pattern variable I, and then I is then in scope, within this case label, and then directly to the right where it's definitely known to be true, and you can do whatever you want then with that case label, and again, or whatever you want with that pattern variable. And again, once it gets down to this next case label, I is out of scope. So this is a good way, again, of like, you can reuse maybe the same pattern variable name within all these different cases if you wanted to, and you wouldn't, like, it's intuitive, it would make sense that it would only be in scope within each case statement. But also with this pattern matching is you can also have guarded patterns. So like we have like this case, this triangle T, and if it's like the area of that triangle is greater than 100, okay, that's a large triangle. Otherwise, you have a triangle that's maybe considered a small triangle, and you can print that out or do whatever you want with it. And then, of course, you still have to have your default statement, because you have to cover, like, if it's not a triangle or something like that within it. But, also this being able to have the guarded statement just makes it a little bit cleaner than having to have, like, your case triangle and then immediately having an if statement within it, and kind of making it a little bit more difficult to read that way. So Dimitri asked another question. So records are like final, so we have to write our own converters. Yeah, so like if you need to change the final or change the value within it, you will actually have to create a new record. I think that's what you're saying, and our new record instance. But again, we'll touch here really soon on how that is also going to be improved upon. Also with pattern matching comes the ability to handle nullability within a case. So if you have like a case null, then you can actually then define a case on how to handle that without it maybe being like a null pointer error or something like that. And the last thing is this also, with pattern matching, the switch will also be able to read the sealed classes of it. So here, as I talked about when it comes to exhaustiveness, here I'm using like express expression. And because I'm covering all the possible different child classes of the sealed interface user, I don't have to provide a default case within this switch expression. And again, it's not necessarily just about saving typing, but also by not having the default statement is that if I was to add like a new record or a new interface type that's extending user, then I would get a compiler error saying like, hey, there's a new, like this switch expression is no longer exhaustive. How do you want to handle this other case statement or this other possible code path? So that's a way of making your code safer, but not accidentally introducing a bug. So yeah, here, if I didn't have the guest case within it, then this would be giving a compiler error because it's not exhaustive. So this is currently in record status, but this is also going to be about adding pattern matching to both records and arrays. And the jet for that is 405. So like imagine we had like a record point, and then we also have like an enum, And then we have the record color point, which takes in a point and a color. And then another record that is rectangle, which has like the upper left color point and a lower right color point. So within this, we have to do like a lot of null checking to kind of like handle it, just to kind of maybe be able to print out the color of like the upper left point. But with pattern matching, instead we can just do like a instance of a rectangle. And of course, if it's an instance of, by default or by necessity, it can't be null. So this helps really clean that up for by adding pattern matching for records. And then also to the point of being able to more easily create like another record is the ability to directly reference variables or values within the record. So instead of having to do like rectangle and then getting like R and then referencing the accessor, I can just actually directly reference that member within like the constructor kind of thing. So that makes it a little bit cleaner and easier to work about. And so we can even then see it here where I can just reference like the first field within rectangle, and then I can reference color within it. So it just makes it much more clean to what I'm actually trying to get to without having to, again, reference necessarily all these accessors, which they can also make it much easier for if like, let's just say you need to create, like you just want to update one value within it, you can easily pull those values out of that existing record and then update the one value you want to change and then kind of go on about your business without having to, mechanically go through and say like, okay, get this value or get reference this field and reference that field and reference the other field out of like the previous record. The same can also, our pattern matching is also going to be done with arrays, to where you can directly reference a element within that array. So here, like string, like I can reference like string, like the first element or the second element without having to do like create a string variable or a string variable, a string array variable, and then doing like that array variable and then referencing like the first or second or third element of it. And then this could also work within a multi-dimensional array, to where, okay, within the first element of the array, then get the first two elements within that array itself. And within like the second array, get the third and fourth elements within that as well, or the first and second element also within that. I think this is a duplicate slide, so sorry about that. So that's some of the changes that are going to be coming up in these next few releases, but let's look a little bit further out as well. So another thing is an enhanced array. So like right now, a problem with a potential issue with the array patterns is, if I wanted to do this, like I would have to kind of go through like all the different members of this array. And that would probably be pretty annoying, particularly if it starts to become anything more than like 3 or 4 or 5 elements in that array, particularly if maybe some of those elements you may not necessarily care about. So like, let's say by further enhancing this pattern matching, like let's say I only want to get the last and second to last elements out of an array, I can maybe reference this to specific elements within that to actually get that value and then assign it to some sort of pattern value, and then use that, however I want in that following if statement. There's also potentially like what's called like a don't care pattern. So to maybe go back a little bit again, just say like here, the only value I really care about is color, but then I'm still having to define the pattern variables point P and color point LR, even I'm not going to use them. And that can maybe be distracting because you're like, oh, am I going to use this somewhere? Even though you don't. There might be an implementation of what's called a don't care pattern to say like, oh, okay, I actually really only care about var X and I don't care about any of these other elements. So I'm just going to maybe have it be underscore to do that. Or maybe you just only reference just you do matching based upon the name to say like, okay, point has X within it. Then I can just assign that to var X and then just reference it. And I don't have to worry about any of the other components within that record or that class. So just make it a little bit cleaner, get directly to the actual point you're trying to work with. Another thing to kind of get to the ability of like easily pulling values out of records is these structuring patterns, to where I can just directly say, like within like this record int expression, say I just want to get the value of I out of it, and just directly reference that without necessarily having to do like int expression I, and then within here, reference the accessor to whatever underlying value I want to get to. And so here's like an example of just how you can quickly kind of maybe go through like a expression switch that, kind of makes it a little bit more clean than what would be really possible with the current code as assigned. And then also possibly you could see pattern matching in for each loops. So we can just, and like, let's say, we want to go through like the entry set within a map. Right now, like we would assign it to like the entry E, and then I would have to reference like E, then get the key value, and then E, get the value of it. Instead, I can just directly reference both the key and the value within the definition, and then assign them and work with those variables then within the body of that loop. So of course, all this stuff I was talking about, this is all part of Project Amber, but there is other active projects. Again, some people may have already heard about them, but one of them is Loom, which is going to be adding virtual threads to the JVM, which will greatly help when it comes to parallelization and concurrency of your applications. Project Valhalla, which is going to be inducing value types, generics, and then overall this is about better aligning memory usage with modern hardware and a few other changes as well. And then also Project Panama, which is about improving working with foreign, that is non-Java APIs. And of course, there's also early access builds for all this. So JDK 18, it got forked off of main a few weeks ago, or maybe about a month or two ago now. So this would be good to actually get a good idea of what's going to be coming in 18 now. And of course, also Loom, Panama, and Valhalla are also all available as early access builds. So if you're interested in those projects, you should definitely check them out, because that could be a good way of getting feedback or seeing ways it can be improved, or just how it might actually interact with your applications. But that said, thank you for the attending my presentation. Thank you for Garden State Jug for inviting me. And again, you can find me on Twitter at Billy Korando. Email me at billy.korando@Oracle. And of course, you can get to my slide deck here as well. Let me copy this link, and then I can put it into the chat. But I'll be here for at least a few more minutes. Definitely type out any questions you have into the chat, and I'll be more than happy to at least try to answer them.
Awesome, Billy. This was great.
Excuse me, Mike. Billy, you may not have access to the chat on YouTube. If you type it into Zoom, then I'll translate it to YouTube.
Okay.
It doesn't let you do URLs.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. There we go. Thank you. Yep, there we go. I sent it to you in Zoom, and if you want to include that, then.
Yeah, this was awesome, Billy. Thank you very much. So while we're waiting for more questions, just want to remind everybody who is attending right now, we do have a link to the form for the raffle. So if you're interested in winning a one-year license to IntelliJ IDEA, please go ahead and do that now. If you can check the chat and fill that out. I just wanted to mention too, Billy, you mentioned Brian Getz, and early on in my writing for InfoQ, I had the honor to actually do Q&A with him 3 times. One of them was the pattern matching, but it went back to the end of September 2017. Mm-hmm. And look how long it took for them, to be coming out, to be actually a feature set in a couple of the releases. And there was one with hyphenated keywords, and another one I think was data classes. But Brian is he's a great guy. He he takes the time to actually to answer your questions, and he'll say it like it is. He says, this is just a half-baked idea, and he means it, so
Yeah.
I had to present it as such, but yeah, and also too, JDK 18 is supposed to be GA in March 22nd, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
And there are 9 JEPs that are part of that.
Mhm.
You had mentioned that it went to ramp down phase 1. I believe it was last month.
Yes.
Phase 2, I think, is on the 20th. But yeah, so a lot of great little features coming up. I think there's a little web server, and a few other nice little features that are in there. So it's
Yeah,
all,
actually, I did a recent video on the simple web server, YouTube Java. So I think that's a pretty cool little feature that they that was added. So you can definitely check it out here, where I kind of cover that new feature. I think it'd be a pretty cool one, particularly if you are doing some testing or just learning Java.
I
go ahead.
Yeah, I want to play with that a little bit, because I'm going to do maybe before the end of the month, do what we know so far about JDK 18, and I think I want to play with that and actually put a little code example in there. So
nice.
That's but yeah, so we're looking forward to also the JDK 19, the executive group, I think, as it were. They've been expert group. That's been formed already. It's the same guys as JDK 18, like Simon Ritter, Brian, some of the others. That of course won't be out until September.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so a lot of good things coming out, Jakarta EE10, and so it's an exciting time to be in the Java space these days. Regardless of how many people have said over the years that Java is dead.
Yeah. You keep hearing it, and then you keep seeing like all this stuff where Java is usually ranked in like the top 3 or maybe at worst top 5 for like any of the most used languages. Something to touch on what you're talking about a little bit earlier, though, with like Brian about introducing language or pattern matching, is so he has done many articles on this, pattern matching in Java. I think probably, yeah. So this pattern matching was added in or he wrote this in September 18th of 28 or September of 2018. But you can just see within it how pretty much all he's talking about has been added or is being added to the Java language. So these are some really great ways of finding out like just a roadmap as to where we're going within the JDK of what's going to be added in the future and kind of what it's going to look like. There's definitely some areas we can see things are a little bit different, but you still get like a really good idea of what shape of things are going to look like going into the future.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And also too, I want to mention Nikolai Parlog tweeted that Brian put out a 3-part blog series on the status or the state of Project Valhalla.
Oh, nice.
So I found all of them, and I put that in one of my more recent weekly roundups. If anybody's interested in that on InfoQ. I didn't get a chance to read it all the way through, but yeah. So that's because I think that's the early access build. It's been a while since they've actually updated them, but But Project Loom, I know they've had some early access build as recent, I believe, as last month.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, or maybe late November or something like this.
Yeah. It does seem like we're getting closer there with Project Loom on when it's going to maybe be added into the main JDK. Again, no promises. Don't quote me saying like, it's within a year or anything like that. It does seem like we're getting pretty close there, and that's going to be really exciting. And like one of the things like Brian Getz like to say is that Project Loom is going to kill reactive programming, and it makes me feeling a lot better that I haven't spent too much time learning about reactive programming. That's going to be the case.
Right, exactly. But yeah, this is good stuff. I don't see any more questions. Did anybody else catch any? I'm bouncing back and forth between Zoom and YouTube.
So sorry, someone said any APT updates. I'm not sure what that, Dimitri, if you could maybe, sorry, was a solid, could you expand maybe a bit on what you mean by that?
Yeah, APT, that doesn't ring a bell either.
Yeah. We'll give them
I don't know if
a couple
Dimitri's
seconds to
with us
type
here.
it out because of the delay, and then also the
Oh, true,
time
right.
it might take
right,
to
yeah.
type it out.
We'll wait a second here on that, but
Uh-huh.
yeah.
I have an observation, Billy.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Java updates, and I was learning Scala recently. So this is my first time learning Scala,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like Java is gaining some positivities from Scala.
Mhm.
Is that the direction that they are going into?
I don't know if I would.
Annotation processing. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a specific direction of going. I guess regards to that, I probably do need to take some time to learn more about Java, but it does touch at least upon one thing that Java delivery does, and which Brian Getz also talks about, which is like the what's called like the last mover advantage, where like Scala, Kotlin, and many other languages, like pattern matching has been in other languages for a while, and like data classes, like Kotlin had data classes for such a long time, and it's like, oh wow, Java's finally catching up with these other languages. That's also deliberate and that's what's last mover advantage, which is that we kind of wait to see what is popular, what's actually working, what developers are actually gaining value out of versus maybe what isn't. There may be certain features and things that initially seemed like a really great idea, but aren't used much, and then would require high maintenance involved with them, or just maybe have like a lot of potential security issues with it. Like another one maybe being like serialization, probably would have been done a whole lot differently had we known now what we knew then. So we are learning from like what is popular about other languages, and I won't say like it's beyond my pay grade or even my just knowledge to know whether or not we're specifically trying to follow Scala or Kotlin or any other kind of language, but we are following what is happening in these other languages and kind of taking the best features and best implementations from them as to how we're going to be going into the future with Java. So thanks. Great observation and great comment on that one. And for the annotation processors, I don't know. I'm sorry. I wish I could give an answer, but I haven't really done any research on it, so I can't even begin to give an answer. Sorry, Dimitri.
Okay. Any other questions here? Let's see. I put a couple of links into the chat for various things, and for you guys to look at down the road. So with that, Billy, if I could take over the screen sharing.
Oh, absolutely.
So, okay, where are we? Screen share. Okay, cool. And I'll start off from here. Okay. Yes. Okay. So upcoming events. The Trenton Computer Festival, which some of you have been around a long time know, this is the 46th year of it, on Saturday, March 19th, and then the IT Professional Conference, of which I'm the conference chair this year, is on Friday, March 18th. This is a one-day event with about maybe roughly 18 talks, and the call for speakers has been out. If you're interested, just ping me. Or you can go to the website there and you get the PDF for that. Basically, it says to send me an email with your abstract. And DevNexus is, as we mentioned earlier, is April 12th to 14th this year. Upcoming meetings for us on Tuesday, February 8th is a presentation on Microprofile 5 by Emily Zhang, but it's going to be, that's a Thursday, February 10th. Sorry. Apologize for that. Yeah, we had to move it. but it is going to be a noontime start. And so, if you have some time during your lunch hour, that would be great to come hear Emily talk about that. So MicroProfile 5, again, was released a little over a month ago. And then we were trying to get Mary for March, but she announced on Twitter that she moved from IBM to Hiva MQ. And so it looks like she'll be available to give a talk on the April meeting right there. And we have a lot of friends of the Garden State group. One of them, of course, is being the New York Java SIG. And this Thursday is Cloud Native Resiliency Patterns from the Ground Up with Anna Marie Mahalsono. I don't know if that's, or Halchano. I'm not quite sure how she pronounces her name. She was actually one of the contributors to the Java Trends report for last year. So. And then KC Jug, of course, which Billy is one of the co-creators or co-leaders, is a week from this Thursday, and Ted Young is going to present "Stop Obsessing About Primitives," and you can go to the URL there to find out more.
Oh, thank you for the shout out for that. Yeah.
Hey, it's nice to. I think it's just nice to just announce each other's presentations. So it's all good stuff. We appreciate you being here today. So, but yeah, so, well, we're gonna actually move these ground rules to another point and take them off these slides. That hasn't happened yet, but so I don't know if we have a winner yet from the forum. Either Neha or Barry has.
I have the information we need, and I want to thank. I want to congratulate Alton Parker for winning this month's IntelliJ license.
Okay, can you verify that you're still here? You do have to be present to win. If you can type it in the chat, which I can't do at the moment.
Remember, 20 seconds delay.
Oh, this is true. Yes, I know. I keep forgetting that. So with that, I'll go to the best slide of all. Is a thank you slide with I don't like to use the word Miller time because with craft beer that's available. I mean, really, Miller. So, but yeah. So it is that time to have a beverage and to celebrate another a first meeting of the new year for the Garden State Jug. We appreciate your attendance, supporting us. We appreciate our sponsors, and we participate in the Java community by being part of the MicroProfile working group and supporting the Jakarta NoSQL specification. So there's some things going to be happening with that. Hopefully, Jakarta NoSQL will be part of the profile, the platform profile or the web profile by Jakarta EE11. And there are some things happening that are being proposed at the moment that might combine Jakarta NoSQL and Jakarta persistence. So that's all I'm going to say at the moment, but more to come on that. So has anybody confirmed that
we have confirmation.
All right, awesome.
Yep.
So congratulations. I will send you an email with a PDF that has the coupon that you can redeem. Just keep in mind that the coupon itself expires in roughly 2 or 3 months, but that doesn't mean the license does. The license is good for 1 full year. So expect an email from that, and then that's it. So if there's anything else, look forward to seeing everyone on February 10th. It's Thursday, February 10th, not the 8th that I had on my slide. So Billy, thanks again.
All right, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
To watching the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. My Saints didn't make it this year, so
next year.
Exactly. So,
all right.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me. Yep.
Have a good night
See you
now,
later.
and I'll stop sharing and we'll log off. So.
All right. Bye.